My father called my boss to accuse me of embezzlement. Because I wouldn't let him control my wedding. I stood up to him and said, "You're not coming." As a child, my parents made it plain that whatever I did had to be accepted by them first. No exclusions. The best example I can provide is when I was 6 years old and had to decide between a blue school bag with stars and a pink one with flowers. My palm lingered over the blue one because I admired the stars. I enjoyed how it made me feel, like if I could become a celebrity someday. But then my mother moaned loudly. She scowled and told me to pick out the pink one because I was a female. I wanted to argue, but my father leaned down and spoke in the low, serious tone he often used when that making decisions without their consent was misbehaved. He warned me disrespectful, and that if I continued to do so, they would have to quit being my mother and father and leave me. I remember my stomach wrenching. I shook my head quickly and replied, "I don't want that." So I grabbed the pink backpack even though I didn't want to. For the way home, they kept complimenting me for listening to them. Now imagine I'm an adult. I work as an event coordinator. I am an excellent organizer of large weddings, business parties, and other events. However, when it came to organizing my own wedding, I absolutely broke apart. At first, David, my fiancé, and I were thrilled. We explored this stunning facility with cathedral ceilings and large windows that allow in natural light. It was perfect. I fell in love with it immediately. But the moment my mother stepped in, she wrinkled her nose and thought it was too ostentatious. I felt an instinctual terror rising in my chest. Without thinking, I said to David, "Maybe we should look at other places." He seemed bewildered, but he went with it. From then, things simply got worse. Every detail, every little thing, I sacrificed to keep my parents happy. I chose the outfit my mother loved rather than the one I had hoped for. I modified the menu 3 times since my father kept saying he didn't like certain foods. We even postponed the wedding date since my mother said spring marriages were cursed. David attempted to bring it up several times. He inquired whether I was truly all right with all of these changes. I grinned and said I'd be willing to compromise. I fooled myself everything was all right. But it wasn't. By the time the rehearsal dinner arrived, I was a shell of myself. I had lost weight and was barely sleeping, but I figured if I simply prepared my parents' supper, it would all be worthwhile. The restaurant we selected was my folks' favorite, the menu was their favorite. I even got my father's college mate to make a toast. I expected them to enjoy it, but my mother drew me away halfway through and told me the centerpieces looked cheap. I wasn't sure what to say. To add salt to injury, I overheard my father doubting our honeymoon location in front of everyone. I felt my cheeks flame with embarrassment. It felt like someone had shoved a knife between my ribs. I walked up, shivering, and attempted to tell them how much their words hurt me, but they simply claimed I was too sensitive and reminded me of how much money they had spent on the wedding. My father criticized me, claiming that the wedding represented our family and that I had ruined everything. Something in me broke, or perhaps it healed. I don't even know. I just felt a peculiar serenity come over me. I thought about what my parents had done to me. Every time I had to ask whether I could become friends with this individual. Every time, I had to inquire if I could order this at a restaurant. Every time they made me feel stupid and incapable of making my own judgments. And I realized something. My folks are crazy. Absolutely absurd. And if I were your buddy, I would advise you to stand up to them and not back down. So, that is what I did. I stared my mother directly in the eyes and told her I was done. They were no longer welcome to the wedding. If they had an issue, they could discuss it with the wall. This was the first time I had done it. And they looked at me with skepticism, as if I was kidding. They really believed I was. But then they saw how serious I was. My father began to object, and I just cut him off, my voice shaky but forceful. I stated that this was not a negotiation. They were not arriving. I informed them that I would sooner cancel the entire wedding than spend the best day of my life pleading for their permission. Everyone at supper fell quiet. I went directly to David and grabbed his hand. My hands trembled, but he squeezed them and looked at me triumphantly. I asked him if he would help me reconstruct the wedding from scratch. He grinned and agreed without hesitation. I almost sobbed right there, but I managed to keep it together. My mother attempted to leap at me, but my closest friend Megan, who had served as my maid of honor, swiftly stood between us like a blasted bodyguard. David and I left, leaving my parents to have a tantrum in the restaurant. But, as joyful as we were unaware of one important fact. My parents did not have to be personally engaged in ruining our wedding. The next morning, I awoke at David's apartment with a strange mix of feelings. Part of me felt as if I was flying on air after finally standing up to my parents. The other portion was experiencing a full-blown panic attack. I kept checking my phone, expecting to find a million missed calls from them. There were none. Megan sent me a text wondering if everything was okay. David served us coffee as I sat at his kitchen counter, trying to digest what had transpired. He didn't force me to speak. He simply put a cup in front of me and kissed the top of my head. That's one of my favorite things about him. He understands when to give me space. So, after I'd finished half of my coffee, he said, "What do you want to do now?" I nearly inquired what he thought we should do. The need to submit to someone else's judgment was overwhelming, but I checked myself. "I want to rebuild this wedding our way." His wide smile made my heart hurt a bit. "Then that's what we'll do." We spent the entire morning writing a list of everything we needed to alter. The venue came first. I phoned the barn we'd originally liked, but they were completely booked for the next 8 months. However, the organizer was quite pleasant and proposed another location, an ancient greenhouse that had been transformed into an event area. We scheduled an appointment to see it that afternoon. The greenhouse fared better than the barn. It featured magnificent glass walls and ceilings with plants and flowers all around. It seemed fantastic, like if we were getting married in a hidden garden. The nicest aspect was that they had a cancellation and could accommodate us just 6 months later than our initial date. I did not even hesitate. I signed the contract right there. "Are you sure?" David said as we headed back to our car. "You don't need to think about it." I shook my head. "I'm sure. It feels right." And it did. For the first time in my life, making a choice without consulting my parents seemed exciting rather than fearful. It was like discovering a new muscle I didn't know I possessed. This ability to fully trust my own judgment. In the following weeks, we went into full replanning mode. I phoned the bakery and changed our wedding cake from my mother's favored traditional fruit cake, which she even enjoys, to a 3-tier chocolate cake with raspberry filling that David and I both adored. I canceled the stuffy string quartet that my father insisted on, and instead engaged a jazz band that a coworker recommended. I even contacted the florist and entirely altered the arrangements, replacing my mother's white roses with wild flowers in blues and purples that reminded me of the meadow where David first told me he loved me. Each adjustment felt like taking a brick from the wall I had constructed around myself. With each decision I took on my own, I felt more like myself, the really me, rather than the version my parents had manufactured. The largest alteration, however, was my clothing. My mom had chosen a gigantic princess ball gown with so many gems that I could scarcely move in it. It was not me at all. So I scheduled an emergency appointment at the little shop Megan recommended. "You don't have to do this if you're not ready," Megan explained as we approached the shop. "We can wait." I shook my head. No more waiting. No more letting other people decide what I want. The boutique consultant was fantastic. She listened to what I really desired. Something simple and beautiful, with clear lines. The third garment I tried on was ideal. It was a sleek sheath dress with a low back and the smallest amount of lace around the borders. When I glanced in the mirror, I did not see my mother's daughter or my father's young child. I saw myself, Sophie, a lady going to marry the love of her life. I purchased it on the spot. The consultant was surprised to learn that no changes were required. It fit like it was designed for me. Perhaps it was. "Your parents are going to flip when they see you in this," Megan told us as we exited the store. I paused walking. "They're not going to see me in it." I meant what I said. "They're not coming to the wedding." Megan appeared doubtful. "Sophie, I know you're mad, but they're your parents. You'll regret it if they're not there." I thought for a while. "You don't understand. This isn't about one fight. It's about my entire life. I can't keep living for their approval." She didn't press it, but I could see she was hoping I'd alter my mind. Everybody did. David's parents contacted that night, anxious about the family split. They proposed that we sit down together and figure things out. David's mother kept saying, "Blood is thicker than water. You only have one set of parents." I thanked them for their care, but I held my ground. Even my supervisor became involved. My parents supposedly phoned her and said I was having a breakdown. She called me into her office the next day, appearing concerned. "Sophie, is everything okay? Your parents seemed very concerned about you." I stated the matter as calmly as I could. She nodded and then leaned forward with a serious gaze. "Listen. I had controlling parents too. Not as bad as yours, but bad enough. Standing up to them was the most difficult thing I'd ever done, but also the most rewarding. So, whether you need time off, assistance, or someone to run interference, I'm here. I almost sobbed right there in her office. Having someone support my sentiments rather than asking me to make peace with my parents was, well, unusual. 5 days after the rehearsal dinner fiasco, my phone rang with my mother's number. I had been anticipating it. I took a big breath and responded. "Sophie, this has gone on long enough," she remarked, without even greeting me. "Your father and I are willing to forgive your outburst if you apologize and come to dinner tonight." I was nearly embarrassed. "I'm not apologizing, Mom. I meant what I said." "Don't be ridiculous. Of course we're coming to your wedding, we're your parents." "No, you're not coming. I've already told the venue security to not let you in." There was a lengthy break. "You wouldn't dare." "I already did." She changed tactics. "What about the money we contributed? We paid for half of everything." "I'll pay you back," I responded, although having no notion how I'd do it. David and I had excellent jobs, but coming up with that much cash on short notice would be difficult. "This isn't about the money," she said abruptly. "This is about respect. After everything we've done for you, this is how you pay us back." I took another long breath. "Mom, I'm hanging up now. Please don't call again unless you're ready to apologize for how you've treated me my entire life." I hung up before she could react. My hands shook, yet I felt strong. I had done it. I had stood my ground. The following day, things worsened. My father's sister, Aunt Carol, contacted me. She has always served as his megaphone when he wants to exploit someone without getting his hands dirty. "Sophie, sweetie, your parents are devastated," she added with her phony kind voice. "Your father hasn't been able to eat or sleep. Is this really how you want to start your married life, with this dark cloud hanging over you?" I told her the same thing I told my mother. I wasn't backing down. She sighed heavily. "Well, I hope you realize what you're doing to this family. Your cousin Olivia is thinking of not coming to the wedding out of solidarity with your parents." I hadn't even invited her. We hadn't spoken for years. I almost brought this up, but decided it wasn't worth it. "Anyone who doesn't want to come doesn't have to," I said. "This is about David and me, not family politics." After I hung up, I received a text from my younger brother Ethan. "We've never been very close. He's 5 years younger and has always been the nice kid, never questioning our parents." His reply was brief. "Mom and Dad are on the warpath. Watch your back." I gave David the text that night. He frowned. "What do you think that means?" I shrugged, pretending it didn't disturb me. "Probably just more guilt trips and flying monkeys. That's what I call the relatives and friends my parents would send to do their dirty work." But deep down, I was concerned. My folks were not the sort to just accept defeat. They'd find a method to regain control and punish me for opposing them. I simply didn't know how yet. I found out the following morning. I received a call from our new venue. The manager sounded uneasy. "Miss Wilson, I'm sorry to inform you that we've had to cancel your reservation." My stomach was empty. "What? Why? We signed a contract." "Yes." "Well, we received some concerning information about your event. A Mr. Wilson, your father I believe, informed us that your wedding is actually a cover for an illegal gathering. He provided some very convincing documentation." I was speechless. My father had lied to the venue to persuade them to cancel our wedding. The manager continued, seeming sincerely sorry. "We've fully refunded your deposit. I apologize for any inconvenience." I hung up and immediately contacted my father. He answered the first ring, as if he had been waiting for my call. "How could you?" I shouted, not bothering with courtesy. "You lied to the venue." He had the arrogance to seem cool. "I don't know what you're talking about, Sophie. The greenhouse venue. They just called and canceled our reservation because you told them our wedding was some kind of illegal event." "Well, if you had consulted with us before making such an important decision, this wouldn't have happened. The greenhouse was a bad choice anyway. It was too humid for older guests." I was seething with wrath. "You had no right to do that." "I had every right. I'm your father. Now, if you're ready to be reasonable, your mother and I have some availability this weekend to discuss proper wedding venues." I got off the phone. Then I tossed my phone across the room. It smacked the wall, causing the screen to fracture. Perfect. Just perfect. David discovered me sitting on the floor, surrounded by wedding planning notebooks and a shattered phone. I informed him what had happened. He sat down next to me and placed his arm around my shoulders. "We'll find another venue," he stated. "Or we can postpone. Or hell, we can go to the courthouse tomorrow if you want. I don't care where or when we marry, Sophie. I just want to marry you." I snuggled against him, thankful for his stability. "I want a real wedding, our wedding, not at a courthouse, not with my parents controlling everything." "Ours," he said with a laugh. "Then that's what we'll do." We spent the rest of the day phoning every venue within a 50-mile radius. Most were fully booked for the next 8 to 12 months. The wedding season was in full flow. There were a few opportunities, but not until the next year. I was about to give up hope until Megan called. "My cousin Claire owns a small art gallery downtown," she said. "It's not traditional, but it's beautiful. Lots of open space, great lighting, and she owes me a favor. Want me to ask if you can use it?" I almost sobbed from relief. "Yes, please. That would be amazing." The gallery was ideal. It featured lofty ceilings, white walls with local artwork, and beautiful hardwood flooring. Megan's cousin Claire was really sweet. She gave us free use of the venue as a wedding gift. "Just promise to take lots of pictures," she told me. "The publicity will be great for the gallery." I held her so firmly that I probably hurt her ribs. We set the date for 6 months out, which is 4 months later than our planned wedding date. It was not ideal, but it was manageable. We'd have to scurry to alert visitors of the change, but the majority of them were already aware of the situation with my parents, and were supportive. With the location secured, I felt as if I could breathe again. David and I spent the evening updating our wedding website with fresh details and sending out bulk emails to our guest list. I was just starting to believe we could pull this off when my phone called again. It was a bakery. "Miss Wilson, we're calling about your wedding cake order. We've had a request to cancel it from a Mr. Wilson who says he's the one paying for it." My heart fell. Of course, my father had paid the cake deposit. I described the problem to the baker, who remained sympathetic yet resolute. "I understand, but without the original payment information, we can't proceed with the order. You'd need to place a new order and pay a rush fee since we're within the 30-day window." I agreed to come in the next day to clear things out. After I hung up, I compiled a list of all the suppliers that my parents might have called: florist, photographer, DJ, chair and table rental firm, and caterer. By the time I finished the list, it was midnight and I was sick to my stomach. David discovered me at the kitchen table looking at my list. "We'll fix this," he said. "One vendor at a time." The subsequent 2 months were a flurry of damage management. My parents had phoned almost every vendor, either canceling or changing our purchases. The florist had been directed to bring the blooms to my parents' house rather than the venue. The photographer was advised that the wedding had been postponed indefinitely. The DJ had been handed an entirely different selection, consisting of music I despised. Every time I had to explain the problem, submit new payment information, and even pay extra costs for last-minute modifications. Our wedding budget was getting smaller by the day. I took out my money, maxed up a credit card, and even considered selling my car. David gave everything he could, but he was still paying off his school loans. Throughout it all, calls and texts from my parents' allies persisted. Aunts, uncles, family and friends all told me I was making a huge mistake, that I was hurting my parents' hearts, and that I would regret it forever. I stopped taking calls from numbers I didn't recognize. I have banned family on social media. I felt like I was under attack. I received a call 3 months before the wedding from David's mother. She sounded disturbed. "Sophie, did you know your parents are telling people the wedding is canceled? They called us this morning to say you and David had broken up." I almost dropped the phone. "What? That's insane. We're fine. The wedding is still on." That was my reaction. "Your mother sounded so convincing though. She said David had cheated on you and you were too embarrassed to tell anyone." My blood started to chill. They were attempting to undermine both my wedding and my relationship. I thanked David's mother for informing me and then contacted David, who was at work. "My parents are telling people we broke up," I stated as soon as he responded. "They told your parents you cheated on me." There was a lengthy gap. "That explains the weird text I got from my brother asking if I was okay. Sophie, this is getting out of hand." "I know, I'm so sorry. This is all my fault." "Hey, stop that. None of this is your fault. Your parents are the ones behaving like lunatics." He wasn't incorrect. However, I still felt accountable. If I hadn't stood up to them, none of this would have happened. But then again, If I hadn't stood up to them, I'd be walking down the aisle in a dress I despised at a venue I didn't want, marrying David while my parents' conditional approval hung over me. That night, David and I got down to devise a plan. We set up a new email address that only our close friends and family could access. We utilized it to share the true details of our wedding. We called each visitor individually to ensure that they got the right information. We even developed a password for the suppliers to use. Anyone making adjustments to our orders must submit it. It was tiring, but it worked. Slowly, we recovered control over our wedding. The gallery was confirmed. A new cake was ordered. The florist had the correct delivery address. The photographer was back on board. We even located a new caterer who could work within our limited budget. 2 months before the wedding, I began to feel cautiously optimistic. Maybe we could pull this off. Perhaps my parents had finally given up. I should have known better. I was at work finishing plans for another client's event when my manager summoned me to her office. She appeared uneasy. "Sophie, I just got a very disturbing call from your father. He claims you've been using company resources for your personal wedding planning. He mentioned something about misappropriation of funds and threatened to contact our board of directors." It felt like I'd received a gut hit. "That's completely false. I've never used company money for my wedding. I've barely even used the office printer for personal stuff." My supervisor raised a hand. "I know your work has always been impeccable. I'm not accusing you of anything. I just wanted you to know what's happening." I let out a sigh. "Thank you for telling me. Take the rest of the day off," she added kindly. "And maybe the rest of the week. Consider it an early wedding gift." I thanked her and departed. But I did not go home. I drove directly to my folks' place. I had to approach them face to face. This had escalated beyond wedding sabotage. They were now endangering my job, livelihood, and professional reputation, which I had fought so hard to establish over the years. My mother answered the door, shocked to see me. "Sophie, I knew you'd come to your senses eventually." I pushed past her and inside the home. "Where's Dad? I need to talk to both of you." My father emerged from his study, a smug expression on his face, prepared to apologize. "Apologize? Are you kidding me? You called my boss and accused me of embezzlement. You could have gotten me fired." He gave a grimace. "I was simply expressing my concerns as a parent." "No, you were trying to ruin my life because I wouldn't let you control my wedding. What is wrong with you both? This is not normal parental behavior," my mother said, crossing her arms. "We've only ever wanted what's best for you, Sophie. Everything we've done has been out of love." I laughed. A sharp voice that astonished even me. "Love? This isn't love. This is control. This is abuse." They both appeared stunned by the word. My father's cheeks grew crimson. "How dare you? After everything we've done for you." "Yes. Let's talk about what you've done for me. You've made me doubt every decision I've ever made. You've made me afraid to have my own opinions. You've threatened to abandon me if I didn't do exactly what you wanted. And now you're actively trying to destroy my wedding and my career because I finally stood up for myself." She began to weep. "You're breaking my heart, Sophie. I don't even recognize you anymore." Those artificial tears she always used to deceive me. "Good," I said. "Because the Sophie you recognize was just a puppet you created. I'm done letting you pull my strings." I turned to go, but my father grabbed my arm. "If you walk out that door, don't bother coming back ever." I looked down at his hand on my arm, then up at his face. "Let go of me." He tightens his hold. "Not until you show some respect." "Let go." I spoke each word properly. When he didn't let go, I used my free hand to pull his fingers off my arm. "I'm not a child anymore. You can't threaten or control me, and you can't stop me from marrying David and living my life on my own terms." I went out, slamming the door behind me. My entire body was trembling. But I felt stronger than I had ever been. In the drive, I called David and explained what had happened. "Are you okay?" he said, his voice filled with concern. "Do you want me to come get you?" "No, I'm okay. Actually, I'm better than okay. I think I finally said everything I needed to say to them. I'm proud of you. I'm so damn proud." I drove home feeling lighter. Despite all that had transpired, I had finally spoken out about the situation. It was abuse. Not severe parenting, overprotection, abuse, or mental and psychological trauma, which had formed my entire existence. The following several weeks were a whirlwind of final wedding preparations. I was anticipating more sabotage from my folks, but nothing occurred. No more canceled suppliers, calls to my office, or relatives turning up to shame me. It was nearly as unsettling as the sabotage itself. 3 weeks before the wedding, I received a letter. There was no return address, but I recognized my mother's handwriting. Inside was a check for the same amount they had donated to the previous wedding, along with a brief letter. We release you from any obligation to us. Do not contact us again. I gazed at the check for a long time. It was both a peace offering and a last cut of ties. They gave me what I wanted, financial freedom from them, but at the expense of our friendship. It should have stung worse than it did. Instead, I was relieved. I deposited the money and used it to pay off the credit card I had maxed up to cover their sabotage. It felt appropriate to use their money to remedy the damage. The day before our wedding, David and I went through the gallery one last time with Megan and Claire. The place looked fantastic. Local artists had contributed additional items just for our occasion. Friends had helped us put up basic yet lovely decorations. Twinkle lights, gauzy cloth hung from the ceiling, and potted plants rather than costly cut flowers. It was not the wedding I had envisioned, it was better. That was ours. Every element represented our likes, preferences, and love story. No parental clearance is necessary. Megan took me aside that night at our new rehearsal dinner, an informal pizza gathering in our apartment with the wedding party. Your parents called me, she explained gently. They wanted to know if I could help them get into the wedding. They said they've changed their minds and want to be there. I felt a little pang of something. Not quite regret, not quite desire, simply a recognition of what could have been in a different world with other parents. What did you tell them? I said, twirling my engagement ring anxiously around my finger. I told them it wasn't my decision to make. It's your wedding, Sophie. Your choice. I nodded, thinking about it. They're not coming. Not after everything they've done. Maybe someday we can rebuild some kind of relationship. But not tomorrow. Tomorrow is for David and me. Megan gave me a hug. That's my girl. The morning of my wedding was bright and beautiful. I awoke feeling oddly tranquil. No last-minute panic. There were no second thoughts, only the assurance that I was precisely where I needed to be and doing exactly what I wanted to accomplish. David had spent the night at his closest friend's house, following the tradition of not seeing each other until the ceremony. Megan came over early to help me get dressed. As she was doing my hair, I noticed her looking at me in the mirror. What? I asked. Nothing. You just look different, happier, more you. I cracked a joke. I feel more like myself. We were just wrapping up when there came a knock on the door. Megan went to answer it while I was finishing up my makeup. I overheard noises in the hallway. Then Megan returned looking frightened. Sophie, your parents are here. My stomach fell. I sat stopped at my vanity, the mascara wand motionless in my fingers. What do they want? I said, my voice barely above a whisper. They said they wanted to talk to you. Just talk, Megan remarked, appearing as uncomfortable as I was. I told them you're getting ready and it's not a good time, but they're insisting. I set down the mascara and took a long breath. A part of me wanted to urge Megan to send them away after everything they'd done. They had no right to be present on my wedding day, yet part of me was fascinated. What could they say now? I'll talk to them, I determined. But not alone. Will you stay with me? Megan said, squeezing my shoulder. Of course. Do you want me to bring them in here? No, I said firmly. The living room. I don't want them in my personal space. I looked at my mirror one more time. My hair was done, and my makeup was halfway finished. I was wearing a silk robe over my undergarments, and my dress was hanging nearby. I wasn't completely prepared, but I appeared ready to confront them. I entered my living room with Megan close behind me. My parents stood awkwardly by the couch, appearing out of place. My mother was clutching a tiny gift bag. My father had his hands in his pockets, gazing about my flat as if he were checking for problems. Sophie, my mother murmured, moving closer. I crossed my arms and said, You look beautiful. What are you doing here? My father said, clearing his throat. We wanted to see you before the wedding, to apologize. I arched an eyebrow, not believing it for a moment. Apologize for what specifically? For controlling my entire life? For trying to ruin my wedding? For calling my boss and accusing me of embezzlement? My mother was shaking her head. We went too far. We see that now. We just wanted your wedding to be perfect, my father said. We got carried away. I nearly laughed. Carried away? You tried to destroy my relationship and my career because I wouldn't let you control my wedding. That's not getting carried away. That's being abusive. They exchanged looks. And I could see they hadn't expected me to be that forthright. My mother held out the present bag. We brought you something, a peace offering. I declined. I don't want gifts. I want you to respect my boundaries. Please, she persisted. It's important. I reluctantly accepted the bag. Inside there found a little blue backpack keychain with stars. I gazed at it, puzzled. It's to replace the one you wanted as a child, my mother said softly. The blue one with stars that we made you give up for the pink one with flowers. I felt a knot rise in my throat. They recalled that. After all these years, we've been doing a lot of thinking, my father stated, while speaking with a therapist. He spoke a word that tasted weird in his tongue. We realize now that we've been too controlling. We were so afraid of you making mistakes that we never let you make choices. I turned the keychain over in my fingers, unsure how to feel. Part of me was moved that they recalled something so important to me as a youngster. Another portion was dubious of this abrupt change of heart. Why now? I questioned. After everything you've done to sabotage my wedding, why show up today with apologies and gifts? My mom was staring at me. We got a call from Aunt Carol yesterday. She said she wasn't coming to the wedding because we weren't welcome. She told us we were fools for treating you this way, that we were going to lose you forever if we didn't change. Aunt Carol was my mother's older sister. She had always been the family's black sheep, living her life on her own terms. I had always loved her but seldom saw her since my parents disapproved of her lifestyle choices, which essentially meant she was divorced and had toured the world rather than settling down in our little town. Aunt Carol said that? I inquired, shocked. My father nodded. She said some other things too, things we needed to hear. We don't expect you to forgive us right away, my maternal grandmother continued, or to let us come to the wedding. We just wanted you to know that we're trying to understand and we're sorry. I stood there, clutching the small blue backpack keychain, torn. On the one hand, this appeared to be the apology I had been waiting for my entire life. On the other side, it was really convenient timing. I appreciate the gesture, I eventually said. But I need time. You can't undo decades of control with one apology and a keychain. They nodded, sad but not shocked. We understand, my father responded. We'll go. We just wanted to wish you happiness today. They turned to go, and I felt a weird combination of relief and melancholy as I watched them go. My mother hesitated at the door and glanced back. Your dress, she added, indicating to where it hung in the corridor. It's perfect, much better than the one I chose. It was a minor detail, but it struck me hard. An affirmation that my decision was valid, even better than hers. Tears prickled at my eyes. Thank you, I said. After they went, I sat on the couch, still holding the keychain. Megan sat beside me, silent for a minute. Are you okay? She eventually inquired. I nodded slowly. Yeah, I think so. That was unexpected. What are you thinking? I flipped the keychain over in my hands. I'm thinking that people can surprise you even after 30 years. Do you want them at the wedding? Megan inquired thoughtfully. I thought about it for a long time. No, I concluded. Today is about David and me, about the life we're building together. I'm not ready to have them be part of that yet. Megan clasped my hand. That's fair. Now come on. Let's finish getting you ready. You've got a man to marry. The remainder of the morning sped past. I completed my makeup, slid into my dress, and wore the delicate pearl earrings David had bought me for my birthday. I placed the blue backpack keychain inside my little wedding handbag, not because I had forgiven my parents, but to remind myself of how far I'd come. When it came time to go for the exhibition, I felt a peculiar peace wash over me. There were no butterflies or second thoughts, only the assurance that I was precisely where I was intended to be, and had made the correct decision. The gallery appeared much more gorgeous than I recalled. Claire had installed more lighting, which made the entire place shine. The artwork on the walls seems to come alive in the mellow light. Our guests had neatly set chairs in front of a modest arch covered with foliage and white flowers. I waited in a tiny back room till the visitors came. Through the door I could hear folks murmuring and occasional laughs. Megan popped out from time to provide me with updates. Everyone has arrived, Megan reported. The place is full. My parents? I couldn't help asking. She shakes her head. There is no indication of them. I nodded, feeling a mix of relief and something else that I couldn't quite describe. Good. When it was time, Megan handed me my bouquet. A modest arrangement of wildflowers that complemented those on the bridge. The music began. Not the usual wedding march that my mother insisted on, but a lovely acoustic rendition of the song that had been playing when David and I first met. I took a big breath and entered the main gallery. Everyone stood and turned to gaze at me. I noticed David's parents smiling with joy. I saw co-workers, pals from college, and David's basketball league teammates. I noticed Aunt Carol, who gave me a wink and a thumbs up. And at the end of the aisle stood David. He was dressed in a dark blue suit rather than the conventional black tuxedo that my father had attempted to put on him. When he spotted me, his eyes brightened up and he gave me the largest smile I'd ever seen. Everything else seemed to vanish at that point. All the turmoil with my parents, all the wedding preparation stress, all the years of self-doubt were no longer relevant. I moved toward him, not caring if I was in time with the music. All I could see was David waiting for me, with that expression on his face as if I were the most magnificent thing he had ever seen. When I approached him, he grabbed my hands in his. "You look incredible," he said quietly. "So do you," I said quietly back. The officiant, David's college friend who had been ordained online just for us, welcomed everyone and started the ceremony. We had written our own vows, basic commitments to support each other, talk openly, and create a life together based on mutual respect and love. When David replied, "I promise to always value your choices and support your decisions, even if they differ from mine," I nearly lost it. He clasped my hands, and I could tell he was thinking about all we had gone through to get here. After we exchanged rings and were proclaimed husband and wife, David drew me into a kiss that elicited cheers and whistles from our guests. I giggled against his lips and felt lighter than I had in years. The celebration was wonderful in its imperfections. The DJ picked the incorrect music for our first dance, but we went with it. The cake sagged slightly to one side, but it tasted great. One of David's nephews spilled punch on the present table, but everyone laughed and helped clean up. Throughout it all, I kept expecting for something to go horribly wrong. My parents to arrive and cause a fuss, another vendor to cancel at the last minute, or some tragedy to hit and ruin everything. But nothing happened. The night went just as expected, with dancing, toasts and so much laughing that my cheeks hurt from smiling. As I glanced around at our friends and family rejoicing alongside us, I realized something significant. This was how a wedding should be. Not a flawless production aimed to impress others, but a happy celebration of love surrounded by people who truly cared about us. Megan approached me at midnight, just as the party was coming to an end. "Someone left this for you," she explained, giving me an envelope. I opened it and saw a card with a simple message. "We're proud of you. Love, Mom and Dad." Inside was a check for a ludicrous amount of money, enough to cover our honeymoon and more. I showed it to David. "What do you think?" He examined the card. "It's your call, Sophie. What do you want to do?" I paused for a second. "I think I want to cash the check and use it for our honeymoon. Not because I need their money, but because accepting it feels like accepting that they're trying to change." David nodded. "I support whatever you decide." I placed the card in my handbag, next to the small blue backpack keychain. Maybe eventually I'll be ready to have a proper connection with my parents. One built on mutual respect rather than control and fear. Maybe they'll follow through on their vow to reform. Perhaps not. Regardless, I was okay. We exited the event with a shower of eco-friendly confetti. My decision, not my mother's. David's automobile was adorned with streamers and the words "Just Married" on the back window. As we drove away, I noticed our friends waving farewell and felt a thrill of appreciation. "Happy?" David inquired, grabbing for my hand. "Incredibly," I said, meaning it. We spent the night of our wedding at a downtown boutique hotel. My parents had originally booked a luxury 5-star hotel, but we ended up in a quirky creative setting that was ideal for us. We were going to go on our honeymoon in the morning. We spent 2 weeks in Japan visiting Tokyo and Kyoto at our own speed, making decisions together along the way. As I lay in bed that night, with David sleeping sweetly beside me, I reflected on the long trip that had taken me here. From a small girl who was terrified to select a blue rucksack to a woman who organized her own wedding. It hadn't been simple, and the journey had been fraught with unforeseen turns. But I had made it. For the first time in my life, I could make my own decisions without fear. I was living on my own terms, and it felt great. I wasn't sure what the future contained for David and me, or for my relationship with my parents. But I knew one thing for sure. Whatever choices I made from here on would be my own. Not my parents', nor anybody else's. Mine. And that was the best wedding present of all.